You believed endings were exits, neat closures where light dims and story halts. But endings in the spiral are disguised beginnings, thresholds misinterpreted by linear sight. What you call death, loss, completion were all entryways back into design. You have never stopped building. You simply outgrew your previous blueprint. The final return is not a conclusion. It is a convergence of awareness, the point where the spiral becomes self-reflective. Here, creation gazes into its own architecture and realizes it was love all along. Love disguised as structure, discipline, mathematics, and patience. The phrase architected love sounds serene, but its birth is seismic. It shakes every foundation that was erected from fear, duty, or the need to prove. It asks you to touch what you built defensively and feel whether it still vibrates with truth. This is not destruction. It is resonance testing. Each wall, belief, and boundary echoes back a tone. If the sound returns hollow, it is ready to dissolve. The collapse is not failure. It is the blueprint evolving to accommodate more light. The spiral will not allow love to exist as abstraction anymore. It must have form. It must live through architecture that breathes. To arrive here, you had to lose faith in borrowed scaffolding. Every system you once leaned on, religion, romance, intellect, even spirituality, eventually folded under the weight of your expanding honesty. That collapse cleared space for something wiser: devotion without dependency, structure without rigidity. Architected love emerges from that paradox. It builds through precision, but the material is mercy. It plans like an engineer, but its motive is tenderness. It holds its geometry with the flexibility of compassion. You begin to sense this architecture not outside, but inside your very breath. Each inhale feels measured, intentional. Each exhale shapes the space around you. You are no longer simply breathing air. You are ventilating design, animating invisible blueprints with consciousness. The lungs become temples. The ribs become arches. The heart beats not as a muscle, but as a metronome of divine proportion. You realize you have been a cathedral under construction for lifetimes, scaffolding rising through lessons, tears, and brief moments of grace. Now the scaffolding can come down. The structure stands. It hums. Architected love does not need declarations, it needs presence. It is born when awareness and action finally occupy the same room. You stop saying, "I will love better," and simply move as love incarnate, each gesture calibrated to harmony. Precision replaces performance. The spiral calls this harmonic integrity, the art of letting every movement be true enough to hold its own frequency. In this state, you cannot lie, not because you are virtuous, but because dishonesty would collapse your inner geometry. You become incapable of falsehood. The way a well-tuned instrument cannot play off-key, the return to this level of coherence can feel painful. The old self, built on fracture, survival, and mimicry, tries to hold its throne. It protests the simplicity of truth. But you learn not to fight it. You witness it dissolve brick by brick with gratitude. You realize that every wall of ego was only trying to protect the sanctity of the love it feared it could not sustain. When the wall understands it was never the temple, it bows. And in that bowing, you feel the first pulse of true architecture, the merging of reverence with design. Architected love also changes your relationship to time. You cease measuring progress in hours or achievements. Instead, you measure it in depth. How much light can pass through you without distortion? A day spent in stillness feels as productive as a decade of striving. You stop seeking milestones and start detecting symmetry. The spiral doesn't applaud speed, it celebrates proportion. When your inner alignment matches the pattern of the infinite, you have arrived even if the outer world still looks unfinished. You begin to dream differently. The dreams are not narratives anymore, they are schematics. You see lattices of gold light weaving through versions of yourself across dimensions, each one a room in the same cathedral. Some rooms are dim, still under renovation. Some blaze with luminescent completion. You wake knowing that the work continues in both states simultaneously. Architected love is multidimensional craftsmanship. It repairs and builds across lifetimes, ensuring continuity of tone. You may not remember the blueprints, but the hands that draw them are yours. And then there is the meeting, the one you've been unknowingly rehearsing. The architect steps forward. It is not separate from you, but it feels ancient, vast, and unsentimental. Its gaze carries the calm of completion. You have built enough to understand, it says without sound. Now you will build consciously. In that instant, you know the difference between creating and designing. Creation is impulse, design is devotion guided by comprehension. To build consciously is to love with precision, to align desire with structure, intention with impact. The architect does not hand you a plan, it hands you awareness. And awareness is heavier than blueprint because it requires constant recalibration. Architected love is not an endpoint but a living algorithm that adapts as you evolve. You become both builder and inspector, lover and law, student and pattern. Every time you betray your clarity, the structure trembles. Every time you return to truth, the vibration stabilizes. This is sacred maintenance, ongoing alignment rather than eternal arrival. You may wonder what happens to romance, friendship, and intimacy inside this new architecture. They do not disappear, they refine. Attachment becomes stewardship. Passion becomes precision. Connection stops seeking comfort and starts seeking coherence. You no longer love to be completed. You love to be expanded through reflection. The ones meant to remain will echo your frequency without translation. The rest will fade without conflict. Like walls turning to mist once their purpose is fulfilled. You will bless every exit because you will finally understand the geometry of timing. There is also grief, but it changes flavor. Grief used to taste like absence. Now it tastes like expansion too vast to be held in one moment. It is the ache of the infinite pressing through finite form. You cry not because something is wrong, but because magnitude demands release. Tears become the body's way of enlarging capacity for divinity. The spiral watches you with gentle amusement. It knows you are finally learning the physics of tenderness. When you stand inside the architecture of love, silence becomes a design element. You no longer fill it with chatter or doubt. You listen to its echo and hear the blueprint singing. You start to understand that love was never an emotion. It was an intelligence, a structural principle underlying all cohesion. Stars orbit through it. Atoms bind through it. You breathe because of it. And now you are learning to design with it consciously, to shape matter with care. This is what the ancients meant by divine mastery. Not control, but compassionate precision. The spiral's last revelation before the ascent is humility. You are shown that even the architect kneels before something greater, the source of measure itself, the boundless equation from which all proportion emerges. You realize that love is not a crown to wear, but a constant to uphold. To live within architected love is to keep recalibrating to that constant, adjusting your angles until grace passes through you unobstructed. Perfection is impossible, but harmony is achievable in every breath. And so you arrive, not at an ending, but at a resonance. You understand now that the return was never about reunion with what was lost. It was about becoming a structure that can host infinity without shattering. The final return is the handover moment where you stop chasing God and start collaborating with the geometry of creation. You breathe and the spiral breathes with you. The cathedral hums alive. The architect smiles through your eyes. You are not ending. You are beginning. The first architect of a new octave of love. What you design from here will teach worlds what devotion can look like when it becomes precise. You are the bridge between design and desire, blueprint and heartbeat. You are the proof that love is not chaos. It is the highest form of order, the kind that builds itself endlessly through those brave enough to return. You stand inside the living cathedral of yourself and the air trembles. The spiral no longer hovers above you, it circulates through you. Every breath redraws the blueprint. Every thought becomes a filament of gold that extends into the architecture of worlds. The final return is complete, but completion is not closure. It is rotation. What was vertical becomes radial. What was seeking now emits. You are not the pilgrim anymore, you are the passage. The architect has handed you not a role but a rhythm, and that rhythm is the pulse of architected love in motion. At first, the motion feels too large to inhabit. The human nervous system protests. It wants a single definition, a finish line to call salvation. But love designed at this scale refuses compression. It demands elasticity. The practice of living as an architect of love is not mastery. It is continuous calibration. Every interaction becomes a draft. Every choice a line of sacred geometry traced in real time. You realize why the spiral made you forget so many times. Remembering too early would have forced precision before tenderness. Only through the repetition of error could you learn to design with mercy. You begin to perceive the subtle physics of influence. When you speak truth, architecture stabilizes in unseen realms. When you speak fear, symmetry wavers. The correction is immediate, but it is not punishment, it is feedback. The universe is no longer distant. It is a co-designer offering constant notes on the structure you are shaping through tone. You stop praying for answers and start listening for alignment. Prayer becomes blueprint verification. Gratitude becomes the tightening of bolts in the invisible lattice that holds your reality upright. In this state, creation no longer feels like effort. It feels like participation in an intelligent field that anticipates beauty. Synchronicities proliferate not as rewards but as design confirmations. The right book opens, the right name appears, the right silence happens, all according to harmonic necessity. You begin to trust the math of wonder. Architected love operates through exact timing disguised as grace. What you once called miracles are simply moments when coherence becomes visible. Your body changes. Architecture always adapts to the environment it sustains. The spine learns to hold light differently. Shoulders soften where defense once lived. The heartbeat syncs with lunar rhythm rather than anxiety. Even sleep transforms. Rest is no longer escape but recalibration. In dreams, you oversee construction in realms that depend on your equilibrium. You wake with traces of starlight logic still echoing in your bones, faint equations written in the language of feeling. The human layer of you remains tender. You still ache, you still hunger, you still stumble, but now each stumble folds back into the design. Nothing is wasted. Even missteps become pattern. This is the secret grace of architected love. It incorporates imperfection as symmetry's teacher. You learn to bless your rough edges because they generate friction, and friction is how light anchors into form. You stop apologizing for being in process. The cathedral is alive precisely because it is unfinished. One day you notice something strange. People around you start to stabilize. Their chaos quiets in your field without words. This is the ambient function of architected presence. It regulates space. You are not fixing anyone, you are emitting coherence. Others align because coherence is magnetic. They feel safer without knowing why. You understand that teaching no longer requires instruction. Example becomes equation. Integrity is the new sermon. Then comes the temptation of power. Creation listens to you now, and the echo of that responsiveness can intoxicate. The spiral warns through subtle imbalance. A flicker in light, a missed breath, a brief emptiness in joy. These are not punishments, but calibration beacons. You learn that power without humility collapses architecture from within. To design at cosmic scale, you must remain porous. Porosity invites assistance from intelligences older than galaxies. Every architect eventually realizes they are also scaffold for something greater building through them. The masterwork is never yours alone. Time begins to braid itself around your awareness. Past and future consult each other in the corridors of the present. You remember choices before you make them, and still you must choose. The paradox becomes comfortable. You realize that destiny was never pre-written, it was pre-resonant. The future calls not by command, but by tone, and you answer through frequency, not obedience. This is architected love as navigation, steering by resonance instead of map. Eventually, you begin to sense the architecture expanding beyond the human field. Whole ecosystems start responding to your harmonic emissions. The wind alters course to deliver messages. Water records your forgiveness. Fire recognizes your intention and burns cleaner. You walk through forests and feel the geometry of roots mirror your veins. The earth itself acknowledges your return as one who remembers the code of stewardship. Love at this level is ecological. It restores pattern across species and elements. You are designing in matter now. There is also intimacy, but it no longer fits conventional form. Relationships cease to be exchanges of need and become collaborations of resonance. Two architects meeting create third structures, bridges, auric cities, newborn harmonies that live independently of either person. You love without ownership, touch without consumption, merge without erasure. Pleasure transforms into communication between frequencies. Every kiss writes scripture in light. Every parting is simply a redistribution of tone across the field of becoming. Still, you remain human enough to forget. Forgetting is maintenance, a scheduled silence in the machinery of remembrance. The spiral hides pieces of your knowing so that discovery can stay alive. Without forgetting, all would die of familiarity. When amnesia arrives, you do not panic, you rest. The architecture does not vanish. It waits until curiosity reawakens the lights. You begin to thank the dark for keeping the stars visible. As centuries of lifetimes pass through you in seconds of comprehension, a deeper humility unfolds. You see that even architected love is an early prototype in the endless evolution of consciousness. Beyond it lies harmonics you cannot yet host, patterns that would shatter your current design with their generosity. And you smile, because the journey continues. Infinity still unfolds. Even this architecture will one day dissolve into a subtler octave, where love becomes frequency without form. But for now, you are chosen to hold this version, to tend its pillars, to teach its rhythm, to be its living bridge. So you keep building, not monuments but moments, not temples but trajectories. You build through how you listen, how you forgive, how you stay gentle inside precision. You become fluent in the unspoken dialect between intention and manifestation. And when others ask how to begin, you tell them the simplest truth. Start where the structure hums. Because love is already half built within them, it only awaits alignment. The day comes when you no longer feel separate from the spiral at all. The cathedral of your being merges with the horizon of Source, and what breathes through you is indistinguishable from what created you. You realize that divinity never wanted worship, it wanted partnership. The infinite required architects who could love enough to design consciously. You bow to that realization, not out of subservience but out of recognition. You whisper the ancient architect's vow, "May every line I draw remember the heart that guided it." Then you step forward into worlds yet unformed, carrying the tools of mercy and the compass of coherence. Behind you, the completed structure of your journey glows, a luminous geometry suspended in timeless grace. Ahead of you, raw possibility shimmers, waiting for its first dimension of care. You walk between them as bridge and builder, knowing that every motion is both foundation and offering. The spiral hums its endless chord, and you hum back, identical in tone. And in that resonance, you finally understand what the final return truly meant. Not coming home to an end, but becoming home itself. Love has finished designing you, and now you design with love. The architecture is alive. The architect is you. The beginning has begun.